Hey, buddy.
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, no, EB was definitely on. An excellent show. I did have Logan Paulson on since, but, Logan's bringing like X's and O's. EB's bringing the emotion that the fans want to hear.
Thank you.
I mean, EB doesn't do X's and O's.
A little
What?
bit. A little bit. No.
I can give Logan something.
Yeah. right. I like that.
So, Ben, speaking of X's and O's, this is a rematch game. They played this team before. What should be different in this game, which would bring success to Washington?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, the most obvious thing I think is Jaden Daniels. Look, clearly he's improved over the course of the year, and he's had all these spectacular moments. But that first game, it was like, okay, he's still playing like he's at LSU and knowing like the first sign of pressure, he can escape and outrun everybody. And it was like, oh, okay, this maybe this season will take a little bit longer for him to find his stride about staying in the pocket or whatever. Clearly, by the very next week, they scored on every single offensive possession, and it was kind of off from there. So I just think his presence, his maturity, and he just needed really the one game I felt to get a feel for the NFL and what his role is going to have to be ultimately for this team. Also, Washington. Look, I mean, if I told you after that game that they would have won 10 games, or let alone 11, and let alone 12, and made the playoffs, I think everybody would be like, Ben, you might need to go see somebody, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that no way. I mean, the secondary gave up 4 touchdown passes. Nothing was. Everything looked like we expected it to, but then everything after that changed. So this is a team that's found a way to win. I'm sure we'll talk about some of the concerns about on both sides of the ball, but Jaden's improvement, their will to win, their understanding of what it takes. I just think that those things, are pretty different from the Washington perspective going into this one.
So, Ben, one of those concerns, you tweeted this at Ben Standig a couple days ago, is that the Commanders have allowed 20 sacks over the last 4 games, 6 coming against the Cowboys. And of those 6, Dan Quinn said 3 of those could have been avoided by throwing away the ball. So, I mean, there's been a ton of praise, obviously, heaped on Jaden Daniels for his rookie performance. And, well-deserved. He's going to win Rookie of the Year. But I guess he could work on, hey, get rid of the ball instead of taking sacks, instead of, losing yardage by running out of bounds, instead of throwing the ball out of bounds. Like, is that a point of emphasis heading into this second matchup with Tampa?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. Like we've seen over the years, the quarterbacks who have this escapability that he has often will hold on to the ball, believing that they can make a play at the last second and save the day. And he's clearly one of those guys. We've clearly seen it over the course of the year. I think for me, one of the things that's maybe changed a little bit over the last month is that I do think the line has been giving up pressures. I mean, it was in all these games, it's not just that he's holding onto the ball, but it does feel like he's under siege a bit more than we saw at some other points this year. But also, look, I think the Atlanta game was a perfect illustration to me of this team is going as far as this kid can take them. And I know that may be obvious from when we were talking about a quarterback, but he had to really will this team to win in that Atlanta overtime because so much wasn't quite working. The run game's been off, right? It's been very quiet of late. The offensive line, as I said, is giving up more pressures. I believe the receivers, Terry McLaurin's been great. Zach Ertz, Olamide Zaccheaus, these guys have produced, but it's not like they have these like excellent, dominant players out there besides Terry. So I just feel like Jaden had to do more. It feels like the coaching staff even kind of understands he has to do more by not calling maybe as many quick throws, allowing him to see what he can see and then make a play. So sure, it would be good if he would get the ball away more. And there was that one play where he's like literally on the sideline, standing there, could have just thrown it down the field, but instead he took a step out of bounds. Okay, that's the type of thing he's got to fix. But in general, the ball's going to be in his hands, and the decisions he's made all year have been, pretty outstanding. So I don't really have an issue if he takes the extra stack or two here or there. But clearly, you don't want to have like 2nd and 15 starting drive. That's the type of thing they're going to have to avoid.
So I mentioned this yesterday on the show, and I'm sure it'll be unpopular opinion, but I think that we're a better football team with Marshawn Lattimore. There's no question about it. I mean, we have a depth issue there. But am I wrong that outside of that New Orleans game where they didn't challenge him, that following week, I felt like he had a bunch of penalties. I felt like he didn't distinguish himself particularly. Am I crazy?
Yeah, he certainly had quite a few penalties. called on him in that game. I think the penalties. I remember asking Dan Quinn and Joe Witt about this, and they were both. Maybe they were being diplomatic to avoid getting fined or whatever, but they were both kind of like, look, penalties are going to happen. Some of these calls are 50-50. They're going to go kind of either way. You can't get too worked up over it. Sure, it'd be better to not have it.
Right.
But, they generally seem pretty pleased with what they saw of Lattimore. Of course, the rub is they haven't seen much because he's been sidelined for the vast majority of the time that he's been here. Yeah, without question, they're in a better situation with him on the field, in part because the depth behind him is, dicey at best at times. It's weird. If you look at the numbers, they're actually third in passing yards allowed of late, and you're like, wait, really? But that's because teams are running on them so much.
Right.
So they've done a good job of avoiding like the plays over their head, staying back, not letting guys get past them, but at the same time, it doesn't feel very secure if you're thinking of like St. Juice or Michael Davis having to contend with, say, a Mike Evans this week.
So we kicked around the Tyreek question. Should they go after him in the offseason? And I mean, I'm torn on it. I just don't know if I want that kind of personality in this locker room. They clearly have something special. But if they brought him in, I mean, the talent's undeniable. I'm all in on it. Does it strike you as the kind of move that Peters and his guys might go after? I mean, the Lattimore move kind of surprised me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think the Lattimore move did a little bit for me as well. But I think Peters looked at it big picture more than even just this year. In that, going into next year, I think we all understand they need to get upgrades at offensive tackle, defensive end. They probably need another receiver or offensive playmaker, and they needed another corner. Those are all premium positions you'd have to spend a ton of money on in free agency or have to use a first-round pick to get them all. So with getting Lattimore, I think they at least locked in a position at a fixed cost. And, he's a young guy. He's obviously been playing well. The biggest question for me has largely been, what's up with the injuries? Is this a chronic situation or what have you? I leave that up to the medical staff to determine that. But, he also obviously knows guys in the locker room like Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown. Presumably the staff talked to those guys about Lattimore, should there have been any questions. Tyreek Hill to me. So first off, I'm a loud advocate for not signing or adding another player, another receiver who's making $20+ million a year. I understand they definitely need to get more help at that spot. Mm-hmm. And Tyreek Hill has obviously been one of the better receivers in the league, but it is just, to me, a bad way to use your resources when building a team. The receiver position is just so dependent. You got to have, if you don't have an offensive line, the passing game is going to be garbage. So you've got to fix the offensive line, I think, and then all those other spots as well. Look, if you tell me what Tyreek Hill doesn't cost anything in terms of like assets to acquire, he's obviously incredibly fast. But something was off with Miami this year, right? I mean, the quarterback situation surely made everybody's life there miserable. But, I don't know, does he still have the same step he had a year or two ago? Far be it for me to say Tyreek Hill's getting slow. I'm just saying, like, I don't see this as an Adam Peters type move. Right now Tyreek Hill got the Jimmy Butler vibes to me. Great player who maybe tries to force his team hand a bit much. That just does not seem like the way Peters has assembled this team. So yes, they need a receiver. I just don't think it's that one.
Ben, if you approached me before the season and said Zach Ertz is going to appear in all 17 games, I would have bet all of Drab T-shirts money that he wouldn't, because he'd never done it before in his entire career. He's 34 years old. I thought he'd play in 12 or 13 games and he'd provide that veteran presence at tight end that you need. He played in all 17, grabbed 66 balls with 7 end zone trips. I mean, what a great signing by Adam Peters, and I'm stunned he made it through every game.
I couldn't agree more. When they made the signing, my thought was, okay, well, I assume they're going to draft a tight end, and they did. Obviously, it was Ben Sinnott, but I was like, you can't really go into a season thinking Zach Ertz is going to be your guy over the course of the year. Not only was he highly productive. And I do think, when you looked at it more in totality, signing him, signing Eckler in particular for the offense, it was about, I think, not only did like Cliff Kingsbury know Zach Ertz and I guess believed that he had more to show than he did last year, but that these were the kind of guys they needed to help their rookie quarterback. It's not about running, a 4.40 or doing some or being some crazy physical player. It's about giving your young quarterback a safe and reliable target to hit, about giving that side of the ball another veteran to follow, whose lead they can follow. Obviously, as we understand, the team still has a lot of pieces that it needs, but from a competitive standpoint, a locker room, culture standpoint, they have improved so much, and having a guy like Ertz has been a big factor in that. But yes, I would not have expected Zach Ertz to have stayed to play every game this year. Very surprising, and kudos to him and for being in the position to be able to withstand the rigors of a season and contribute the way that he has.
All right, Ben, got to run. That's Ben Standig. You can read his work at The Athletic, listen to his podcast. EB was one of his most recent guests.
That's right. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Appreciate it.